Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and I gladly welcome you all to my semi-blind let's play of Make a Good Mega Man Level Contest 2, or MaGMML 2 for short. MaGMML 2 is an anthology of 81 Mega Man levels submitted by contestants from around the world, assembled into a massive Mega Man game complete with fortress levels, an endless mode, and a large amount of bonus content. 5 judges, all hailing from different backgrounds, carefully reviewed all of these levels and scored them based off of several criteria. The result of which is one of the biggest Mega Man classic fan games I've ever seen so far. The only thing that can compare is Mega Man 8-bit Deathmatch, but that's a really different genre. So with over 4 times as many entries, a dev team consisting over a dozen people, plus 16 other beta testers, this game is an incredible improvement over MaGMML 1, which I did also Let's Play. All of this content and features should satisfy people's craving for classic Mega Man for months. If anything, as I just said, it's the largest classic Mega Man game. I've been gladly waiting for this fan game to be released ever since I submitted my level back in mid-February. There's just so much to do and enjoy in this game that it feels like it's a great celebration for this franchise's 30th anniversary. So for this LP, I'll be aiming to complete 100% of the game, or at least try getting as close to 100% as possible. But of course, because of this, there will be some areas where I will have to return back to levels once I figure out where the secrets are and what else. So without further ado, let's begin the story. Here's just a demo test just to make sure the recording went well. So let's begin, shall we? Because of how big the game is, I expect this LP to swell over 40 parts. Not to mention, I don't know how long each part will be because of each of the level lengths being rather different. After all, some levels will be much longer and much more expansive compared to MaGMML 1. If anything, the variety of level types and structures in comparison to MaGMML 1 is a lot more varied in MaGMML 2. So the basic plot behind MaGMML 2 is that there's a festival being held for Mega Man's 30th anniversary. And thankfully Dr. Wily is nowhere to be in sight. Well, for now at least. You know how it goes in most fan games. So in that case, the whole city has decorated and set up an entire giant festival for this. And in fact, the main feature of this is their new virtual simulations that real objects can interact with. AKA, each of these interactions or simulations are levels and tiers. That was a little bit of an odd text box glitch there. Virtual death traps is one way of saying it, especially with some of the levels we'll be going through soon enough. And as always, just like in MaGMML 1, all of the levels we've sorted into tiers based on how well they did. But of course, because there are 81 level submissions in this game, there are double the amount of tiers, and each tier has about double the amount of levels. And of course, at the end of each level is an energy element, but sometimes there may be multiple of them. I find it funny though, in the previous competition of MaGMML 1, no one picked more than one level exit, even though they had the ability to. That was rectified in this one with a bunch of people, including myself. Also, the layout for the lab has been smoothed out a bit, so it's less confusing to go through. Anyway, here's Mega Man. He controls the same way as he did in MaGMML 1. He can jump, shoot, slide, and do charge shots. Thankfully though, it's actually a 60 FPS engine, unlike MaGMML 1, which was 30 FPS, thank goodness. And of course we also have the quick weapon swap. And by pressing L and R together we can swap back to our main weapon. I'll explain the choice of weapons that we have in MaGMML 2 once I get to the first level. It's quite an impressive thing that the number of contestant levels has quadrupled, but the amount of content of the game in comparison to MaGMML 1, it's more so than quadrupled. I would say it's increased by 8 or 9 times. So each and every level was judged by 5 judges, just like I mentioned before, out of 50 points, and each level is based off of its average of the 5 judges. So the breakdown is by 15 points in design, 10 points in fun, 15 points in creativity, and 5 points each to aesthetics and functionality. And of course, every stage was given a comment by each judge, some more humorous than others. So the judges for this competition are Snow and Pyro, she's returning from Magma 1, Jupy Hornet, Angel, Gary or Giriri, and A-Spark. And just like before, we can see the comments for each of the levels at monitors. So Tier 1 contains the lowest place level, and Tier 10 has the best levels in the competition. But of course, I will be playing the levels in order from worst to best, so in this part, I will be covering the worst levels. Thankfully though, because some of the levels are rather bad, just like in Magma 1, some levels were given skip teleporters so that you can collect all the energy elements and noble nickels without having to go through the pain of going through the stage. And of course, this will explain all of the judges' background information and what they look for in each level. Just like before, Pyro is the most generous of the judges, and she looks more for interesting usages of new gimmicks and ideas. I'm quickly going to thumb through all of these judge comments, so if you want to see the full information, just pause and play the video. Jupy likes a stage that's exploring their full potential. So in essence, Jupy loves levels that are creative, fun, and are executed well. He'll dislike a level that has a ton of potential but fails in execution more than a level that's absolutely horrible. Angel is looking for more clever inspirations. Giriri, or as they'll call him Gary for... I'm probably going to keep mispronouncing her name, sorry. And of course, A-Spark, well, I interpret him to be the harshest of the judges. Although in general, all the judges are going to be much harsher in comparison to Magma 1, which was a lot more generous. And I would agree with A-Spark. Magma 2 is quickly becoming one of my favorite Mega Man fan game in its entirety, mainly because of all the features and content. So that was meeting the judges, so let's continue on forwards. Hello, Cutman. Cuts my gears. There are going to be a lot more puns throughout this title, that's for sure. Oh, hello, Reggae. Reggae functions as the following. As you buy upgrades from the shop on the left, you can disable them if you want to make the game harder or easier, etc. So in this case, we start out with the energy balancer enabled, which I will keep because it's very convenient. But of course, if you want to disable some upgrades, feel free to do so at Reggae. And yes, Eddie was discovered running the illegal shop in the previous game, but Dr. Lice wanted to keep him here. Because I have no bolts, I will just quickly thumb through all of the upgrades. I will return back to the shop to showcase each of the items in more detail, probably in 2 or 3 parts after Tier 1. Also, I really like the nice touch that we actually have lowercase text, and we have italics, vibrating text, or text intensifying. It really adds more character to the dialogue. Another major advancement of Magma 2 over Magma 1 is that the hub world has been expanded immensely. No longer does it take place just under Dr. Light's lab, it takes place over a city festival, which has a rather varied environment. I'll be exploring this hub world throughout the LP, but as you get more noble nickels, energy elements, as you complete more stages, more and more characters and stuff will be added to the hub world. So I will have to come back and search through the hub world multiple times to see what new stuffs are being added. So let's talk with Metal Man. There are always NPCs wandering around in the hub world, and you can talk with them for some interesting tidbits and fun stuff. And Metal Man just basically spelled out what I just said. More NPCs will arrive as we collect more energy elements. I forgot to mention this earlier, but noble nickels are essentially the red coins or star coins / red rings of this game. Each level can have up to 5 noble nickels that you can find scattered throughout the stages. Thankfully, at the beginning of each stage at the teleporter, it will tell you how many energy elements and noble nickels there are. Oh boy, Otto is really stretching the definition of great there. If anything, he's completely lying. So as always, I'm going to be starting out with the worst levels and then work my way forwards. Also, another interesting note, all of these tiers aren't organized directly from 1 to 2 to 3 in the hub world. They're actually organized a little bit differently. As you can see here, the tier 1 tent is just left of the tier 5 tent. So I will not be visiting the tier 5 tent for about 10 or 15 parts probably. This teleporter will send us into this simulation, although it is a beta one, which may have some bugs. Also, at the entrance of each tier you can also see how many energy elements and noble nickels there are for the entirety. That's really appreciated. So let's enter tier 1, which has 9 energy elements and 1 noble nickel. So far so good, it looks nice and peaceful, nice and blue, nice clouds, the ocean, it's like a pier. I can't move though, and uh-oh, the music corrupted, the graphics are corrupted, everything's blowing up. We have all these enemies from Mega Man 3 or 4. Well, this is definitely a nice intro to what's to come for tier 1. After all, these are the bottom of the barrel levels. So time to go through the worst level of the game. In 80th place, Snowman by Coinmaster with a score of 3. Before I start though, let me showcase each of the weapons I have. We have the classic Mega Buster with the Charge Shot. We have the Hornet Chaser from Mega Man 9. We have the Jewel Satellite from Mega Man 9 as well. We have the Grab Buster from Mega Man V or 5 from Game Boy. The Triple Blade from Mega Man 10. The Flash Stopper from Mega Man 2. Or no, that's Mega Man 4 from Brightman, sorry. The Slash Claw from Mega Man 7. The Wheel Cutter from Mega Man 10. The Sakugane from Mega Man 2 for Game Boy. The Rush Coil, Rush Jet, the Wire Adapter, as well as the Super Arrow. So we have a nice selection of weaponry. After all, they were selected based off of categories before the game actually opened up for level creation. Which I do appreciate because in MaGMML 1 we had several weapons that kind of they stepped on each other's gimmick areas or specialties. Not anymore. Now we have a nice delineation of each special weapon and they all have their own uses. And different categories. So without further ado, let's enter Snowman stage, which only has 1 energy element. Oh, and I forgot to disable something, but oh well. At the bottom there, you can enable a timer to showcase how long it takes for you to go through the level. After all, I turned on the leaderboard. I will disable that in the next part, so it isn't too distracting. Well, for each of these levels, I will be providing my own commentary and explaining what I like about the stage, what I don't like about the stage, and ways to improve it. For most of the Tier 1 and Tier 2 and some of the Tier 3 levels, I won't have that much to say about them because they're so bad. And because this is the worst stage, you have a skip teleporter you can access in order to skip the stages in entirety. Of course, an instant thing you can see why the stage is bad is we have invisible hitboxes you can see here. And of course, it actually has the default Galaxy Man team. When we were designing levels for the MaGMML 2 engine, the default team was the Galaxy Man team. But of course, you're supposed to replace it. But in this case, they didn't, so well, that's another knock against this stage. Also, I got knocked into the spikes somehow. There are going to be quite a few stages that forgot to replace the Galaxy Man default team throughout the first few sets of tiers. Expect to hear this team a lot. And in order to cross this gap, you need to use a special weapon, otherwise you won't be able to make it. Yeah, forced weapon usage in the first stage. How joyful. So let's use the Rush Jet, I suppose. That's the only way I can see getting across this. But you gotta be a little bit careful so you can actually position yourself right and get by the spikes. The Rush Jet and Rush Coil have been improved ever since MaGMML 1, so they will not glitch out as much, thankfully. And now we have Yoku spikes. This segment isn't too bad either. And each special weapon works better against certain enemies, more so than others. In order to cross this gap, you need to use the the wheel cutter. I see no way to make this jump unless you're really precise. But even then, you need to do it at the bottom block, otherwise you will not have enough inertia to go upwards, as you can see over there. Yeah, I know, it's really annoying. But this is after all the worst level of the game, so I have nothing much else to say about it, other than it's horrible. That's going to be a common thread throughout the stages in this part. And for the first few parts, I won't have much to say other than gawking at how bad the stages are designed. I mean, sure, this segment is a little bit fun, where the Yoku spikes, where you have to be a bit careful where you're positioning yourself, but the rest of the stage elements are just thrown together. Gotta be a little bit careful here so you can make your way across. And of course, the background elements are a little bit hard to see. We have spikes randomly placed, all sorts of bad stuff. No wonder this is the worst stage in the game. Enemies thrown together, nothing is being introduced properly, invisible blocks randomly placed everywhere. Yeah, this is just the worst. I can see why this is rated the worst, but it isn't the worst playable stage. No, it isn't. There are worse stages coming up. You'll see soon enough why. Because even though the stage is really bad, it wasn't rated as the least favorite level of the judges. In fact, that means there are even worse stages later on. As you can see, we have unfair placement of these enemies. And we're at the boss door. Thankfully, the big eyes are weak against the triple blade, otherwise this would be a lot more annoying. And we have the boss fight coming up right about now. Or rather, there would have been a boss fight, but because this is the worst stage, Coin Master didn't add one. And random sandstorm. And if you complete all of the stuff that a stage has to offer, that is collect all the energy elements, aka end up finding all the level end paths, and collect all of the noble nickels, you'll get a crown indicator. So let's look at the judge comments on this. They speak for themselves. I find it funny that Snowrunt, Jupy, and Ace go for more memey answers. Also, for the first set of levels, especially in the lower tiers, Ace will respond in comics instead of the usual comments. I still find it funny that Angel and Garuri actually did a more detailed breakdown of what makes the stage so bad. Gimmicks not being introduced properly, random placement of enemies, unfair placement of enemies, random blocks everywhere, invisible solid blocks. This is basically the absolute worst stage. Please wake me up from this nightmare. Oh, there are going to be stages that are a lot more nightmarish than this one, that's for sure. I find it befitting that the glitched background, glitched enemies, and whatever else, they really fit this Tier 1 aesthetic. At least you can't die in the Tier 1 area. That would be hilarious. And that would be also befitting. Alright, time to go to the second worst level. In 79th place is Cardinal Man by Arbade, with a score of 5.2. Snowrunt was rather more generous on this, and this is the first level with 3 exits, although this stage didn't really well utilize it. First we start out on the melting ice, and I'm going to collect those M&E tanks as quickly as possible. Just like before, we can skip this stage if we really want to. In some ways I feel this stage is worse than the previous one, but we'll see. At least we have a little bit more unique idea usage of enemies right now. Okay, we have this enemy from Mega Man 6. Let's step on it and whoa! Yeah, it just shunted you directly to the left. Normally you would expect it to go much more slowly, but no, it decided to go fast. Also, there's red things on the left, they're instant death spikes. The only way you can know it is by the fact it's red, so another knock against this level. Also, this is actually a ladder. You'll need to hold. The only way you can figure this out is by holding up. If you're wondering how I know all these things, well, remember when I said this is a semi-blind playthrough of this level? Or a semi-blind let's play? That's because I watched the Flashman85's livestream of this game several months ago when it was in its more beta state, unreleased state. So I know a bunch of the tricks and secrets of these stages, but not all of them. After all, I didn't watch all of the Flashman85's livestream of this game. Plus, it has been quite a while since I watched it, so there's going to be quite a few things I'm unfamiliar with. If there's one thing that this stage has over the previous one, it's the fact that it actually replaced the original musical track of Galaxy Man's team. There are a whole bunch of levels at higher tiers that didn't even bother to replace the original Galaxy Man team. Not even replace it with other Mega Man classic teams, or even remixes. I just find that so sad. I mean, the second worst level actually had the decency to replace the level song. Thank you, Eddie. And yes, you're forced to use Rush Jet in order to get across here, because if you use the... If I can figure out what that weapon was called. If you use the superhero here, you'll probably get stuck unless you're really good. Also, if you drop down this ladder, you instantly get killed for some reason. But, thankfully there's a checkpoint here. If you climb down the ladder, you survive. I'm not sure what would cause that issue. I mean, they're the same route. Here we have these water segments, a giant telly over there, and that spike camouflaged into the background a little bit, another knock against the stage. As I said, if I were to deeply analyze each of these levels throughout this part, most of the comments would be that this stage does all of these things horribly, so I'll probably just summarize it at the end of this part, or at the end of each level. It's just so bad. I do like the usage of these water fountains, although I wish they gradually go down. And just like in Mega Man 2 for Game Boy, the Sakugane prevents us from dying from hitting the spikes, which is really appreciated. You know, I like this segment with all of the water fountains pushing us upward and all these enemies. I just wish it was combined with a better stage and actually was introduced properly. And there was less enemy spam everywhere. That would be really helpful. And that was exit 2 of this stage. Another grievous sin this stage does, or I don't know if it's grievous, is the fact that you have to replay it 3 times, but for the majority of the stage, there is no difference. You take the same route over and over and over, and there's only minimal changes. Those are the types of multiple exit stages that I don't really like. I like it when stages decide to split off early and have alternate pathways and alternate exits that way. But when you have an alternate exit split really at near the end of the stage, it feels like I'm just have to repeat the stage over and over. Also, you can get lodged into the wall somehow there. Let's hope that, unfortunately Eddie didn't pick the right choice there. Oh, thank goodness the Croakers deal only 1 point of damage here, just like in Mega Maker. Oh, and trust me, this isn't the worst of a Rush Jet segment at this stage. Oh, there's worse. You'll see soon enough. I decided to kill myself here because I want to regen all my health. Also, another nice addition or / improvement of this game is the fact that you have infinite lives unlike MaGMML 1. You won't get kicked back to the start screen or back to Dr. Light's lab if you run out of lives. Is there something to the right here? I swear there was something to the right, but... yeah, there was. Oops. Did I just glitch through the stage? I guess there was something to the right, but I ended up falling further than I was supposed to. Okay, unintentional ways of skipping stages. Also, bad implementation of slopes. Thankfully, these tougher enemies are weak against the triple blade. And now we slide through this immediately closing and reopening door. And unfortunately, Cardinal Man will not be joining us due to technical difficulties, so instead Chillman will fight us. But Chillman refuses to touch the energy element. You'll see what I mean soon enough. There's the energy element on the top right and Chillman at the bottom, so let's fight Chillman. I will be using special weapons against the bosses that were in the engine, but I will be trying to do bosses Buster only if they're not part of the engine, or like custom bosses. And just like before, Chillman can freeze us too. But overall, it's a rather poor stage, but it's slightly better than Snowman stage for the fact it actually went on and used some more interesting gimmicks and actually replaced the music. And the boss corridor isn't that bad either, it seems unique enough. And Chillman's weakness in this engine is the Jewel Satellite. I'm not sure why, but okay. Also, this boss fight takes place underwater too, so you gotta be a little bit careful. Wow, I'm doing a poor job dodging Chillman's weaponry. So I'll just rely on my Buster to finish the job, assuming I don't keep getting frozen everywhere. But of course, even if you kill Chillman, the fight isn't over yet. We need to get to that energy element, which is protected by those mines and all these blocks. So we gotta get close enough here to detonate the mines, and then destroy those blocks so we can actually get up there. But what makes this even more difficult is the fact there are all these spikes, but there's an easy, simple way to get across there, which I'll showcase soon enough. First, let me kill off these enemies, the swarms, that is. Nope, you can't get over there because there are invisible blocks over there. So the easiest way I can see is by using the Sakagane to bounce up over here and bounce on the spikes so you can get across. There is a more difficult way of doing this by using the super arrow, but it's a little bit requires more precision. Well, this was Cardinal Man. Honestly, I already gave my opinion on it. It would just get a 4 or 5 out of 50 for this. And as an FYI, I'll be judging more of these levels. I'll be more heavily weighted to how fun and creative the levels are more so than anything else. And yeah, why was this called Cardinal Man? I don't see any cardinal or directions. That's a simple answer. Well, that's one way of saying the stage. Alright, on to 78th place. Quirky, inconsistent, incomprehensible, nonsensical track, or Quint by Alex 9000. Score 7.2. Let's see how bad this level is. This is going to the levels I forget quite a bit. Another thing about these lower tier levels is that they're rather forgettable and don't have a consistent gimmick, so... And now we have a remixed version of Fairman's team, and we start out with these bomb segments. As long as you don't hold down the jump button, you can get by without any problems. This one you gotta be a bit quick on. The initial segment is fine, there's no problems. And then you fall down here, and then things get a bit odd with scrolling, as you can see there. We have our first introduction of Sniper Joes, but thankfully we have a bunch of weapons that can easily defeat them. Also, we have random usage of the tile sets here, for some odd reason. And we have the frog mini-boss. One of the usages of Slash Claw in this engine, and one of the big improvements, is the fact that it can pierce through enemy guards. Also, another thing that was added to this engine was the keys. They work the same way as in Super Mario Maker. As in, once you collect a key, you can use it to open a door. That is later in the stage. Another nice touch about the Slash Claw is that if you kill an enemy with a Slash Claw, they're ripped in half. Also, there's no background of the stage other than it being solid blue. Okay, now we just need to keep going forward on evenly spaced blocks. We're taking up here. Thankfully there was no lag. I was a bit worried that some of these stages would lag, especially with how big they are. And we get an E-tank for our exploits. And yeah, those skull blocks are instant death, by the way. Be careful. Oh yeah, and also another thing about this engine, just like Mega Maker, level designers can disable usage of certain weapons if they want to. Like in this case, we only have access to the Mega Buster and Slash Claw, whereas having stuff like the Sakugane would make the segments so much easier. So now we just have a long jumping segment. Thankfully we can't bonk our head against the instant death on the top, which I do appreciate. So this stage is a little bit better compared to Cardinal Man, as it has a better gimmick introduction, but still it's pretty bad because, well, we're missing a background for one. And a whole bunch of other things too. But at least it replaced the music and has a little bit more discernible gimmick, and at least for the first section, a nice introduction to the platforming segments, or the springs, but it isn't really expanded upon. Even then, when I say nice, it's relatively average. Somehow I got that jump in the first try, I'm not sure how. Now we fight this Met Dispenser with all these Yoku blocks, because we can't hit it normally. This is going to be a slight problem, especially with all the Mets being dropped everywhere. We need to use the Slash Claw in order to destroy this thing, otherwise it's immune to our shots. At least the Mets it drops aren't too annoying. Oh yeah, and by the way, those are instant death as well, you gotta be careful with jumping. And that was the end of the stage. That Met Dispenser basically acted like the boss at this level. And this was a normal run, and this was actually my first no-death run. If you're logged into the leaderboard like I am, depending on what weapons and how well you do it, you'll get different ratings or qualities. Like, the best rating you can get for a stage is doing it no death, buster only, no special weapons. There's also one for no damage, I believe. That way it'd be like a perfect run. For many of the stages, I will not go for a perfect run. It's way too difficult. The fight against the Metallopodan was pretty fun by jumping on top of those Yoku blocks, but the majority of stages empty featureless hallways, like Pyro said. Like that segment of jumping on all of those count bombs over those death spikes or death squares. There was just a repeated challenge. There was no varying of the height, for example, which would be nice. And yeah, incomprehensible is a nice way of saying it. Wow, Angel was rather harsh in this stage. Even more harsh compared to the previous levels. And yeah, the graphic usage was rather inconsistent and hideous. The blue background did confuse me at first to think that it was underwater. If there's anything, I would like to see that mini-boss fight at the end be reused in another context. That was fun. Oh yeah, and the stage did get broken in a few parts, as you noticed with the camera jittering. So let's go delve further into Tier 1. 77th place is Mix and Match by Zealix, and with a score of 9. Sorry if I'm mispronouncing the names. 1 energy element, and the first and only noble nickel in this tier. For some reason, the earlier tiers don't seem to use noble nickels. It's only in the later tiers where we actually see more usage of noble nickels. Oh goody, now we have the same track of Galaxy Man. Expect to hear a lot of it, as I just said. Worse yet, this stage is using the debug graphics from the debug tile set, with the very simple ones that you use for building the stage. They're not even working on actually using a proper graphics, only really using debug graphics. I know I did use these graphics when I built Conveyor Mayhem, but even then I replaced it later on. I do like how they creatively put fight, and they're putting a corridor of different types of enemies. If anything, this is a battle corridor. I guess this is why it's called Mix and Match. But if anything, I really wish they replaced the music with something more battle-oriented. But I guess we're going to be fighting all sorts of enemies that are in the devkit. There are many enemies that were added to the devkit, that's for sure. Even more so compared to Mega Maker. And thankfully the dev was nice enough to not actually limit our special weapon usage. So we can use any special weapon we want. Oh, the Sumatrans. Thankfully they can be one-shot. Also, thank you for illustrating that we need to use the Sakugarne here. Specifically for the fire tailies that are coming up, I suppose. Nope. End. Adding to the problems with the stage, apparently this level didn't even have an exit, even though it actually said end here, so Snow and Pyro had to put the exit here. Well, okay then. Let's see what the judges' comments have to say about this. There's nothing more to say about it other than the fact it was just multiple corridors with a bunch of enemies that we had to fight. It wasn't even that fun because we just fought enemy corridor after enemy corridor with no variance in terms of the room structure. Only new enemies being added, but once a new enemy was used, it was never used again, I suppose. So what was the point of introducing every type of unique enemy? It's just like a lot of wasted potential. Sorry, Joopy. And I do agree with Angel the fact that this feels like a very primitive stage, and it ended earlier than what it was supposed to. But I would like to see a more enemy arena based challenge where you have to fight hordes of enemies. That would be neat. And there are no graphics, we're just using the debug ones. When I say debug, I mean placeholder tileset and music. If anything, it makes it worse than even Snowman and Cardinal Man in that regard. In those cases, they at least recolorize some tilesets or use some new tilesets. Well, I guess this is a good time to end off this part. So in summary, I covered the 4 worst levels in Tier 1. So in the next part, I'll be completing Tier 1. I really appreciate all the hard work that was put into this game. It's really fulfilling my expectations, both on the engine and content front. But of course, we won't be able to see the really good levels until about 10 or 15 parts later. However, there is a silver lining, I suppose. Buried deep beneath all of the bad design decisions, questionable music and graphical choices, there are some nuggets of interesting ideas that could be much better executed in better stages, which we will see in spades. That's one thing I want to pay attention to. Well then, thanks for watching and have a nice day. Toodles!